Hello and welcome to the show. Uh, Today I wanted to talk a little bit about a subject near and dear to my heart, a subject that we haven't covered before on the show, and that is education. Broad term, right? So, what do I mean by education? Specifically, I'm talking about how we as parents choose to make sure that our kids are prepared for the real world because it's our responsibility. That's rule number one. And many of us are so wrapped up in our own lives, barely grown up ourselves, some of us raising kids, kids raising kids, and haven't even taken the time to think about choosing how their kids will be taught. And many of us just abandon that responsibility to the state because, hey, it's free and they babysit, so we can go to work and try to make enough money to pay the light bill. That's what a lot of people are doing. And unfortunately, by abandoning that responsibility to the state, we have a generation of kids raised by bureaucrats, by ideologues, by people who embed themselves into the educational system because it's the only place where anyone will listen to what they have to say, because otherwise people will think they're nuts. You'd be amazed the crap our kids are being taught. So, with that said, how do we approach some kind of solution to this? As long as our economic situation is such that many parents are going to be struggling and going to be working their asses off, many cases, supporting their good for nothing brother-in-law and poor old Aunt Ada who has a bad back. I mean, the normal stories of families. And at the same time, trying to raise children, pay their bills, deal with domestic non-tranquility, try to find happiness somehow. And oh yeah, the state is scrambling your kids' brains at school, you hear. Yeah, it's probably somewhere down on your list. Not much is going to change under those circumstances. And what I'm thinking is a organized approach that makes it easy for people to tap into alternatives is the best way for busy parents to make alternative choices without horribly complicating their lives any more than they already are complicated. Clearly, if our economy was better and less mismanaged, that perhaps we wouldn't be working ourselves to death in order to simply survive. But that's where we are right now as we sit on the precipice of a new age and watch the death throes of an old one right in front of our eyes. That's what's going on. Those of you who listen to me on a regular basis already know my theories on this, my thoughts. But it's a hard time to be alive. It's also, in theory, and probably in truth, an incredible time for opportunity. It's hard to see the opportunity, but think of it like the Old West. The Old West was one of the greatest opportunities. But it's hard for us to imagine just how much of a wilderness the Old West was, and how, you couldn't just pick up the phone and call the cops if something went wrong. And sometimes bad people did bad things and got away with it. And so there wasn't always justice because there wasn't always a way to have justice. And sometimes efforts at justice created injustice. Lynchings come to mind. So it's complicated and it's hard, and people died. But it was also an age of incredible opportunity. And if you got on the ground floor in certain places and in certain ways, you could have incredible long-term success. So that's where we are. We're in the Wild West of a new age. And if we can learn to see it that way and teach as many people as possible how to take advantage of the opportunities, then perhaps they won't have to work themselves to the bone just to make a few dimes. But that's a much bigger picture issue, a much bigger picture solution. And to narrow things down, even though it's not very narrow, and just talk about education itself, a quote simpler solution, though it's still not simple, would be to try to provide some sort of canned type of solution, a simplified solution for parents who want an alternative to government-run schooling or expensive, very expensive private schools. And private schools, I know from experience being involved with them, can be extremely expensive and yet are typically not profitable at all. And the teachers don't really make very much money at all. Nobody's getting rich, except in maybe somewhere some big corporation has figured something out. But the bottom line is, in most good small private schools, nobody's making money, and still it costs a lot. So I think the solution is to come up with whole new concepts of what is education, how you deliver information, how, or beyond that, how you facilitate, how you help parents to raise their kids by being assistants, guides, and teachers, so that their kids can grow up healthy and strong and wise of the world and have the skills they need to be successful themselves, rather than thinking in terms of a school building and teachers in a room and desks facing, and a desk in the front with an apple on it. You know, if you get away from the traditional concept of schooling, suddenly a lot of the dollars involved in education start to go away. So that's what I think these canned solutions will be. They will be non-traditional. They will take advantage of the best and brightest globally and can that information and can those ideas and present them. But I'm being extremely general right now, and not giving you any specific solutions. But that's something that I think deserves a lot more attention. There's been a lot written on non-traditional education, and a lot of ideas are being tested and tried, and there's a lot of homeschooling things that go on. But of course, homeschooling is requires at least one parent to stay home with the kids usually, or sort of a community school kind of thing where you have 3 or 4 families that get together and one of the parents does it. That's a solution, possibly. And then, of course, you have a lot of parents who get involved in homeschooling, do so because they have strong philosophical or religious beliefs that they are trying to espouse to their kids, or possibly indoctrinate, depending on the parents, and they're looking for other families that hold similar views. That's their business, I suppose. And when you're used to one-size-fits-all government education, that can be a little unnerving to think that somebody else's kids are getting, quote, indoctrinated from your perspective. But it's their kids. So, I mean, who's to decide what kids learn? Is it the parents, or is it some official board of experts that have decided that they know more than you do? So, I mean, that's an old argument. Personally, I choose the parents, even if some of them are batshit crazy. It's true. Anyway, that's just a little blurb, a little tiny bit I wanted to touch on education. And the deeper issue that I touched on that was not directly education related, which was the economics of families today and how it's almost impossible to get by for many, many families, or even consider things. How can they even think about school? I mean, they don't have the money to pay their food bill. So they don't have the energy, the emotional energy, to invest in their kids' education. They barely invest emotional energy in their kids, many of them. And then many people are not very good parents or lazy or not responsible. And this is especially see this in dads who walk away because they think they can. So when you have those kind of attitudes, those are not the kind of people who are going to be thinking, "Gee, I'm really concerned about the indoctrination of my children by public schools," or you know, I want my kids to learn in a certain way, or I want better options for how my kids can, what my kids are exposed to as they grow, so that they develop in a healthier way than the stuff that's coming out of the public school sausage maker that we have for education, public education system today. So anyway, that's what I had to say about that for now, and I will talk about it more in the future and go into more details about both the education angle and the family economics angle, and see what we kind of, which of the world's solutions we can solve today. So with that, thanks a lot. Good seeing you. Take care.